The first thing the galaxy learned about humans was that we did not look dangerous. On a council broadcast, the humans stood in plain suits under clean lights, hands open, voices calm. No claws, no venom spines, no armored plates. Their eyes faced forward, like a prey animal that forgot its place. Many frontier species watching from far stations laughed at the sight. The warlike empires dismissed them as soft-blood diplomats. Even the traders who had lived through pirate raids said the same quiet thing. These creatures would break the moment fear became real. That was before the Helix Corridor went dark. Helix Corridor was not a world. It was a stretch of space filled with relay buoys, refuel platforms, and long habitat chains that carried food and workers between systems. It was how the outer colonies breathed. When the corridor dimmed, it was like watching a lung collapse in slow motion. Cargo ships stopped answering. Stations fell silent. The last images were shaky and wrong. Emergency lights, drifting bodies in pressure suits, doors welded shut from the inside. The Council called it a dispute. The Empires called it a chance. The frontier species called it a warning and locked their ports. The humans called it a battlefield. They arrived with a single task group, not a parade fleet. That, too, looked like weakness. A handful of ships, gray and plain, no bright banners. They moved with a patience that unsettled the observers. They did not race for glory. They scanned. They listened. They waited as if time was an ally. Aboard the Council observer vessel, the xenologist Velethin watched the human flagship through layered glass, trying to read the shapes and the silence. Velethin was from a temperate world with low gravity and calm seas. Their people measured danger by temperature swings and storm warnings. Predators on their homeworld were rare and small, the kind you frightened off with noise. War, to Velethin, was something you studied in archives and ended with treaties before the first shots. Yet the corridor felt wrong in a way that treaties could not touch. The sensors showed wreckage that should have been cleared. Whole fragments and frozen fuel drifting in patterns like swept sand. The signal buoys were intact but empty, their cores stripped. Someone had worked here, careful and patient. That was the detail that raised the small hairs along Velethin's neck frills. A raider struck fast and fled, a beast killed to eat. This was neither. This was a mind. The Council had sent Velethin to record everything the humans did, then report back whether the new species could be trusted with defense contracts. It was a polite assignment on paper. In truth, it was a test. The Council wanted to see how the humans would behave when their first real conflict arrived. Humans had joined the Council less than 3 cycles ago. Their origin data was thin because they guarded it. The files called their home a Deathworld. That word had weight among frontier species, but most treated it like a scary label, like saying a planet was cursed. There were Deathworlds that were simply too hot or too cold. There were Deathworlds with corrosive air. There were Deathworlds with predators that hunted in silence. Humans came from a Deathworld with all of it, and they wore it inside their bones. Even their gravity was a warning. The Council's standard was light, built for long lives and delicate bodies. The human standard was heavy. Your ships carried higher internal gravity so their crews could move like they were at home. Most species could not stand in it for long without pain. Their muscles trembled. Their hearts overworked. Their joints ached, as if the universe itself had decided to press them into the floor. Humans called it normal. When the human liaison came to the Council observer vessel, Velethin expected a proud warrior or a cold commander. Instead, the visitor was a tired-looking human with short hair and a face lined by sleeplessness. Their uniform was plain. Their eyes scanned the room the way a cautious animal checks corners before it drinks. "My name is Warden Hale," the human said, voice steady. "We are taking operational lead in the Helix Corridor for the next 40 hours. Council staff may observe from a safe distance." Safe distance. The phrase landed hard. There was no insult in it, only an assumption. It was the way you spoke to someone you did not want to see hurt. Velethin tilted their head in the human gesture they had practiced. "The Council appreciates your assistance. The corridor is classified as a security incident, not open war." Hale's mouth moved in a way the translation software tagged as restrained humor. "Incidents do not carve stations open and strip their cores." Velethin's frills tightened.
Ow.
"You believe this is an invasion?" "I believe," Hale said, "that something is hunting your lifeline." That word, hunting, was not part of the Council's usual war language. Council briefings spoke of engagements, disputes, operations. Hunting belonged to survival, to predators, to the old instincts many species like to pretend they had evolved beyond. Velethan looked down at the corridor map, at the dots that marked missing ships. "What will you do?" Hale leaned closer to the display, pointing at the patterns of wreckage. "First, we assume the enemy has watched you. Your standard response is to send patrols in predictable loops. You light up your comms. You broadcast demands. You threaten sanctions. That is not how you survive this." "How do you survive it?" Velethan asked. The human's eyes did not leave the map. "You stop being loud prey." The human task group moved next, and the corridor changed around them like it noticed a new kind of presence. Human ships powered down to minimal emissions. They drifted in the shadow of derelict platforms. They placed small devices on broken hulls and let them float away. The devices were not bombs. They were simple sensors, passive ears, the kind a stalking predator might use to feel the ground. The Council observer ship followed, uneasy and the human made quiet. Velethan watched crew members become tense. Many species found silence in space comforting. This silence was different. It felt like holding your breath underwater while something moved above you. Hours passed. No attacks, no signals. The corridor remained dead. Then one of Hale's officers spoke over a narrow beam channel. "Contact, not on active scan. Passive signature only." Velethan's breath caught. "How can you have contact without scanning?" Hale's reply came without excitement. "We are listening for what a hunter cannot stop doing. They have to move. They have to adjust. They have to breathe heat." A new mark appeared on the tactical display. At first it looked like background noise. Then it slid across the map with intent. The enemy ship did not fly like Council ships, did not accelerate and break in clean arcs. It drifted, cut power, drifted again. It used debris fields as cover. It moved like something that had learned how to ambush and vacuum. It was close to a habitat chain with civilians. That was the second detail that turned Velethan's frills cold. The enemy was not striking military targets. It was choosing soft ones. It was using fear as a tool. Council doctrine would have ordered an immediate broadcast. Identify yourself, stand down, submit to inspection. The human ships did not broadcast. They did not close fast. They held position as if the corridor itself was a trap and they were waiting for the right step. Velethan could not hold the question back. "Why are you not engaging?" Hale's voice came soft. "Because this is not a duel. This is a kill zone." The translation software flagged the term, offering alternatives. Area of engagement, tactical zone. Hell did not use those. Hell used the language of predators and storms. On the screen, the unknown ship slid closer to the habitat chain, and a second signature flickered near it, then a third. Small craft, almost invisible. Boarding pods, Velethan realized, meant to latch onto the habitat and cut through. The corridor had not gone dark because ships were destroyed in open battle. It had gone dark because something had been taking them apart from the inside. Hale's next words were quieter than before. "They think this is war." Velethan swallowed. "Is it not?" Hole paused, and in that pause Velethan sensed something heavier than gravity, something carried in human memory. When Hele spoke again, the voice was not proud. It was weary, like someone describing a scar they never asked for. "War is what you call it when two sides agree to rules," Hal said. "A real battlefield is what happens when the rules burn away and only survival instincts remain. My species grew up under gravity that punishes weakness, under predators that do not negotiate, under weather that kills without hate. We learned early that danger does not announce itself. It waits." The human task group shifted position by fractions. Tiny course changes, tiny angles. A net closing so slowly the prey could not feel it. Velethians stared at the display, trying to understand the humans' calm. They were not fearless. Velethian could see the strain in their voices, the strict control. This was not bravado. It was discipline born from hard lessons. And then the unknown ship made its move. It fired not at the human ships, but at the habitat chain. A beam lanced out, cutting a clean line through the outer ring. The station's emergency shields flared. Civilians screamed over open channels that suddenly burst alive like a dying animal's final cry. The Council observer crew flinched. The Lathan felt their own body tighten, instincts screaming to run, to hide, to beg. Their people did not do well with chaos. They froze. Hale did not freeze. No, Hale said. The human ships ignited in perfect silence, engines flaring only for a heartbeat. They did not charge straight in. They dropped into angles that forced the enemy craft to choose between their prey and their escape. Small human drones spilled out like seeds on a harsh wind, each one matching the enemy's drift and shadowing it from blind spots. The unknown ship tried to vanish behind a wrecked freighter. Human sensors had already mapped the freighter's rotation and the way its broken panels caught starlight. The humans fired into places the enemy would be, not where it was. The shots did not look like victory. They looked like control. Velethan watched one of the boarding pods detach from its target, then spin wildly as if struck by an invisible hand. It drifted, helpless, away from the habitat chain. A human drone stayed near it, steady as a predator, keeping a wounded thing from escaping. "What are you doing to them?" Velethan whispered. Hale answered with a simple phrase that carried dread, taking away options. The enemy ship finally broadcast a harsh signal full of threats and demands. The translation software rendered it into cold, arrogant words. It claimed ownership of the corridor, promised pain if the humans interfered. It spoke as if fear itself was a weapon that always worked. Hell listened, then spoke once, not to negotiate, not to threaten, but to correct. "You came here thinking you understood war," Hale said. "You brought sharp teeth and loud words. Now you attacked civilians because you thought it would break us. That tells me you have never lived where the world itself tries to kill you every day." The unknown ship hesitated. Even across the void, Velethan could feel that hesitation like a tremor. It continued, voice still calm. "You are in a battlefield now, not because we declared it, because you made it. We are the frontier species you should have feared." Velethan's frills lifted as the human ships tightened their net. The unknown signatures multiplied, not from the enemy, but from the corridor itself. More hidden contacts. More silent watchers. The humans had not been the first hunters here. They had simply become the most dangerous thing in the dark, and the corridor was about to prove it to everyone watching. The corridor did not explode into chaos the way Council simulations predicted. It tightened instead. Space itself seemed to hold still as the human ships moved with careful intent. The unknown craft tried to pull away, but every path it chose slid it closer to a human hull or a waiting drone. There was no rush. No shouting over open channels. The humans treated panic like a resource to be denied. Velethan watched as one of the habitat chain segments stabilized. Emergency crews sealed breaches. Human drones latched onto torn hull plates and held them steady against vacuum, buying time. The humans had planned for civilians before the first shot was fired. That detail landed deeper than any weapon display. On the observer deck, a council officer whispered, "They are prioritizing life support over pursuit." Hale heard it through the shared channel. "Survival first," the human replied. Always, that word again. Survival. Not victory, not honor. Just survival. The unknown ship twisted, engines flaring harder now. It fired blindly, trying to carve space open. Human counterfire came in short, controlled bursts, striking thrusters, sensor arrays, connection points. The goal was clear even to Velethan now. The humans were not trying to destroy the ship. They were trying to strip it down to helplessness. As the enemy craft slowed, a new signal appeared, deeper in the corridor. Not one ship. Many. Faint signatures, layered and patient, hiding inside debris fields and behind derelict stations. Velethan felt a cold weight settle in their chest cavity. They were not alone, Velethan said. Hale nodded once. They never are. The revelation shifted something in the observer crew. Fear sharpened into understanding. This had never been a single raid. It was a network. A slow invasion that fed on fear and confusion. The corridor had not been unlucky. It had been studied. Humans did not sound surprised. As the first enemy ship drifted powerless, human boarding craft detached from the task group. They were small, armored, built to move in close spaces. Their crews operated under gravity, heavier than most council species could tolerate. Velethin watched the feet as human figures moved through narrow corridors with steady steps, magnetic boots clicking softly. Their breathing was controlled. Their movements practiced. The unknown ship's interior was harsh and angular, designed for speed and intimidation. The humans adapted without comment. When they met resistance, they flowed around it. Doors were sealed, power was cut, control was taken piece by piece. Velethin realized then that this was not the humans' first experience with this kind of darkness. Their reactions were not learned from simulations, they were inherited. During a brief lull, Hale allowed the Council Observer crew limited access to human archival footage, carefully selected. It was not a history lesson. It was context. The first clip showed a blue and white world viewed from orbit. Cloud bands churned like restless muscle. Storm systems covered continents. A caption translated simply, "Earth. Your homeworld is unstable," a council analyst murmured. The footage shifted to the surface. Dense forests where shadows moved with purpose. Wide plains where herds ran because something unseen had startled them. Oceans that rose and fell with crushing force. Mountains that split weather systems in half. "This is not exceptional," Hale said. "This is Tuesday." Another clip. Human cities under rain so heavy it blurred vision. Sirens, people moving anyway, clearing debris, carrying each other, building barriers against floods that would fail by morning. Another clip. Nighttime, a human settlement near wilderness. Eyes glowing beyond the light line. Predators waiting for a mistake. "Our children learn early," Hale said quietly. "Look around before you step. Listen before you sleep. Do not assume safety because nothing has happened yet." Velethin felt something shift in their understanding. Many council species grew up with danger as an exception. Humans grew up with it as a constant. Their survival instincts were not triggered by rare events. They were always humming under the surface, shaping behavior in small ways. The archive continued. Humans in protective gear working near fire lines, heat so intense it warped the air. Humans in freezing storms, skin cracked, hands shaking, pushing forward anyway. Humans under crushing gravity during training, muscles burning, refusing to stop. "This is not because we love suffering," Hale said, as if sensing the unspoken question. "It is because the world does not care if we are ready. It only cares if we endure." Back in the corridor, the hidden enemy network reacted. Signals flickered between the concealed ships. They repositioned, trying to surround the human task group. Velethin watched as the humans adjusted in response, not by pulling back, but by anchoring themselves to the corridor's geography. They used wreckage as cover, used shadow and angle. They turned the enemy's patience against them. One of the council officers asked, "Why did they wait so long to strike the habitat chain?" Well, they answered, "They were testing response times, mapping fear, waiting for a pattern, and now they see something they do not understand. The enemy network made its next move. Two ships broke cover at once, attacking from opposite sides. It was a clean maneuver, well-timed, meant to split attention. Human ships responded by doing something unexpected. They did not split. They tightened. Drones swarmed, not attacking directly, but filling space with false signals and shifting heat patterns. The enemy sensors struggled to lock onto anything solid. Human ships drifted behind this moving curtain, changing position by fractions. Velethin felt their pulse spike. They are hiding inside their own noise. Hale gave a thin smile. Predators do that on Earth. They learn how their prey sees, then they break that vision. The battle did not feel loud. It felt close, intimate, like hands grappling in the dark. A council ship on the edge of the formation sent a panicked request for instructions. The officer aboard was not used to this kind of silence, this kind of waiting. Hale responded immediately. "Match our vector, reduce output, trust the net, trust." Another word the humans used differently. On Earth, trust was not blind. It was earned through shared risk. The council ship complied. Its emissions dropped. For the first time, it stopped broadcasting fear into the void. The effect was immediate. One of the enemy ships drifted past it without noticing, sliding into a human trap laid minutes earlier. Velethin's frills fluttered. "They're teaching us while fighting." Hale did not deny it. Between maneuvers, fragments of intercepted enemy communication reached the observer deck. The translation was imperfect, but patterns emerged. The enemy referred to humans with confusion and growing alarm. They questioned why the prey did not flee, why the prey did not signal for help, why the prey moved like it had been here before. One fragment stood out. A rough translation rendered it as, "They hunt like the dark itself." Velethan felt a shiver ripple down their spine. The enemy network began to fracture. Ships broke formation, trying to retreat deeper into the corridor. Human ships did not chase recklessly. They cut off paths, closed doors the enemy did not know were there. During another brief pause, Velethan found the courage to ask Hale something that had been forming since the first archive clip. "When your species joined the Council," Velethan said, "many feared you would bring war with you." Hale considered the words. "We feared the opposite." "The opposite?" "That the galaxy would think war was a game," Hale said. "Something clean, something distant." "We did not want to be the ones to explain what happens when games become real." Velethan thought of their own homeworld. Gentle gravity, shallow seas, storms you could predict days in advance. Predators that fled when challenged. Where people had evolved to cooperate, to debate, to avoid extremes. They had never evolved to endure. The corridor shifted again. A new signal flared, stronger than the rest. A command ship, larger and more heavily armed, emerged from behind a shattered station. Its hull bore scars of many fights. It did not hide. It advanced openly, weapons charging. The observer deck fell silent. "That is their core," one council analyst whispered. "It falls, the network collapses." Hale did not look at the analyst. Or it adapts. The human task group adjusted formation, not pulling back, not surging forward. They spread slightly, creating space. The enemy command ship fired, beams cutting through debris fields. One human drone vanished in a flash of light. Another followed. The first time, the humans lost something. Velethan felt a surge of dread. The enemy ship was powerful. Its weapons were tuned for destruction, not control. It was a blunt instrument in a field of knives. Hale's voice remained steady. "Record this," Hale said to the observer crew. "This is where misunderstandings become costly." The enemy command ship broadcast on all channels, its message filled with triumph and contempt. It declared the corridor reclaimed. It demanded surrender. It promised mercy. The word mercy did not translate cleanly. Hale responded not with threats, but with a question. "Do you know how many ways a human can survive being hunted?" The enemy ship hesitated, just long enough for the human ships to complete a maneuver Velethan had never seen. They rotated their formation around the command ship's projected firing arcs, staying just outside optimal range, forcing the larger vessel to constantly adjust. Energy built. Tension coiled. The humans were setting something up. Not a final strike. A lesson. Velethan realized then that the galaxy's greatest mistake had not been underestimating human weapons or numbers. It had been misunderstanding human patience. Humans did not rush toward victory. They waited for the moment when survival demanded action. Then they acted without hesitation. As the enemy command ship powered its main weapon, unaware of what it had exposed in doing so, Velethan felt the weight of the truth settle in. The galaxy had feared war. Humans had lived inside battlefields their entire history, and the corridor was about to learn the difference. The enemy command ship's main weapon charged with a sound that never reached the observer deck, yet every sensor on every hull screamed the same warning. Heat rose, fields bent. The weapon was designed to end arguments, not win fights. It was the kind of tool that made fragile civilizations believe control could be purchased with one bright act of force. On the Council observer vessel, hands gripped railings, junior analysts' breathing turned fast and thin. Velethan felt their own body trying to fold inward, instincts begging for distance. Their species did not do well when the universe suddenly reminded them how easy it was to die. Hale's voice cut through the tension, calm like a hand pressed to a racing heart. Not stare at the weapon, stare at what it needs to fire. Velethan forced their eyes away from the glowing core and watched the command ship's structure. Energy lines ran toward external vents, toward stabilizers, toward a spine of exposed conduits that had to remain open or the weapon would overload. A powerful system, but still a system, still dependent on rules of heat and stress. Humans loved rules of that kind. It's not the rules of treaties, it's the rules of reality. The human formation kept circling, slow and controlled, never crossing into the command ship's perfect firing window. Drones threaded through debris like insects in tall grass, flashing false signatures to confuse targeting. The command ship's sensors hunted for certainty and found only shifting lies. The enemy commander finally fired anyway. A beam tore through a dead freighter, cutting it open like dry wood. The debris field changed shape in an instant, fragments spinning out, becoming new threats. One piece clipped a human drone, sending it tumbling. Another struck a civilian cargo pod drifting near the habitat chain, puncturing its hull. Velathan's frills snapped tight. The pod's life signs flickered. Before the council crew could even form a request, a human rescue craft broke from formation and shot toward the pod, not fast enough to look reckless, but fast enough to show decision. It moved through the debris field with clean precision, as if the pilot had practiced moving through chaos their entire life. A council officer gasped, "They are leaving the net." Hale answered, "We are not leaving anyone." The rescue craft reached the pod. A human in a pressure suit latched onto the hull, cutting through with tools that threw sparks into the void. Another human fed a flexible seal into the rupture and pressed it flat. The pod's pressure stabilized. The humans did not call it heroism. They called it procedure. Velathan watched the feed and felt something uncomfortable bloom behind their ribs. Shame, perhaps. The council had argued for hours about whether to send relief ships into the corridor. Humans had not argued. Humans had acted. It was then that Velathan understood a deeper contrast than technology or weapons. Fragile civilizations believed safety was maintained by distance and debate. Hardened species believed safety was built with hands under pressure while danger watched. On the enemy command ship, the alien commander watched the same rescue maneuver and felt a different emotion. It's not shame, fear. Their name, translated roughly, was Kethri. Their species had grown rich, raiding softer systems. They had learned that most prey folded when you threatened civilians. It was clean, efficient. You did not have to risk a real fight when fear did the work for you. But these humans were not folding. Kethri's second officer spoke in a harsh, clipped rhythm. They disengaged to save the weak. Exploit that. Press the habitat chain again. Kethri stared at the tactical display, watching human drones keep station around the boarding pods they had already disabled. Watching the human formation never fully break. Watching the rescue craft return to the net as if it had always been part of the plan. "They are not distracted," Kethri said, voice low. The second officer's crest flared with irritation. "They are soft. They protect civilians." Kethri's claws tapped the console. "They protect civilians under fire. That is not softness. That is training." The second officer hesitated. "Then what are they?" Kethri did not answer quickly. They had seen war on screens. They had raided. They had killed and taken. They had never stood on a world that tried to kill them without intention. They had never faced predators that did not care about threat displays. They had never fought storms that tore buildings apart. Humans had. The command ship adjusted its position, trying to force the humans into a straight exchange. Kethri needed a simple fight, a contest of beams and armor. That was a language they understood. Humans refused to speak it. In the habitat chain, civilians watched through cracked viewports as lights flickered and alarms continued. Most were not soldiers. They were families, dock workers, hydroponic techs. Frontier species from half a dozen worlds, all of them used to council protection and predictable danger. A small child pressed their face to the glass, eyes wide. Why are the humans not running? The child's parent, a thin-bodied trader from a low-gravity moon, swallowed hard. Humans do not run the same way. Nearby, an elderly engineer whispered into a comm unit, voice shaking. "I have worked this corridor 40 years. I thought I knew fear. This is different." A human medic in the habitat's emergency bay heard that and paused while sealing a patient's suit collar. The medic's hands were steady. Their voice was gentle. "Fear is normal," they said. "You just keep moving." The engineer stared. "How can you keep moving when you know you can die?" The medic did not offer a grand answer, only a simple truth. Because stopping does not make you safer. In that moment, the habitat's civilians saw something that no council meeting had ever shown them. They saw humans as they were when stripped of speeches. Not conquerors, not saviors. just survivors who refused to let panic set the terms. Back in the void, the enemy command ship launched another wave of small craft. Not boarding pods this time, but fast interceptors meant to slice through drones and hit human ships directly. The formation broke into multiple angles, trying to overwhelm the net through sheer motion. Hale watched the approach and made a quiet decision. "Switch posture," Hale said. A human officer asked, "To what?"
Elf!
Reply was calm and heavy. "To Earth." The phrase meant nothing to most council listeners. To the humans, it carried a library of instincts. Human ships changed their spacing. They allowed the interceptors in closer, as if inviting the attack. Drones pulled back, opening lanes that looked like weakness. Kethrai's second officer saw it and hissed in triumph. "They break." Now the interceptors surged into the opened lanes. Then the lanes collapsed. Human drones snapped back into place like a closing jaw. Hidden devices that had been planted on wreckage earlier activated, projecting tight bursts of interference that scrambled guidance systems. The interceptors tried to correct, but their corrections pushed them into each other and into debris. Not enough to destroy them outright, but enough to throw them off balance. Humans were not trying to win in one strike. They were turning speed into a liability. Velathine watched, stunned. "They laid traps," Hale replied. "Everything is terrain if you think like you grew up hunted." The human net tightened again, but the enemy command ship remained the problem. Its main weapon was charging once more, and this time it angled not toward the humans, but toward the habitat chains, power spine. Single cut there would darken hundreds of lives. It would create panic. It would create cover for escape. Kethrai leaned forward, intent sharp. It did not need to defeat the humans, only to remind the corridor that fear belonged to them. Hale saw the aim and spoke with sudden force. "All ships, block line." A council officer blurted, "You will take that beam." Hale answered without hesitation. "Yes." Velathine's frills trembled. "Why?" Hale's voice softened. "Because we can." It was not arrogance. It was a statement of physical fact. Humans had built their hulls for punishment because their bodies had been built for punishment. Their technology reflected their origin. Their ships were not sleek ornaments. They were endurance-made metal. Human vessels slid into the beam's path. The command ship fired. The beam struck a human ship's forward plating, and the sensors flared red. Heat spiked. Field strained. The human ship held position, engines pushing against the force. The hull glowed at the point of impact. The observer deck, a council officer cried out, unable to stop themselves. "You will melt." Hale's reply was quiet. "We have been closer to worse," the human ship's captain reported, voice strained but controlled. "Taking load, holding." A second human ship moved in beside the first, sharing the beam's edge, distributing heat like two backs under one weight. The beam wavered. The command ship had expected a target to break or flee. It found a wall. The habitat chain remained intact. In the silence after, even Kethrai hesitated. Their tactics relied on fragile bodies and fragile minds. They relied on the belief that pain would make prey give up. Humans did not give up because of pain. Humans expected pain. They planned for it. They moved through it, Kethrai's second officer whispered. "They are not afraid of suffering." Kethrai's mouth tightened. "No, they are afraid of failing." A new transmission came through, rooted from the habitat chain. It was not a council broadcast. It was a civilian signal, shaky but determined. A dock worker, voice raw, spoke into an open channel meant for anyone listening. "We see you," the dock worker said, speaking to the humans. "We are still here. Do not let them take us." Hale listened for a heartbeat, then replied on the same open channel, voice clear enough for civilians and enemies to hear. "Stay sealed. Stay low. Keep your lights minimal. We will hold." Hold. Not win. Hold. Keep the line. Survive the next minute, then the next. Velathine felt an unexpected heat behind their eyes. Many frontier species had never heard a military leader speak like that. Not promises of glory, not threats of revenge. Just a vow to endure alongside you. The enemy command ship pulled back, recalculating. Its weapon had failed to create panic. Its interceptors had been turned into drifting debris. But it still had options. And then something else happened, something that did not match the enemy's plan or the humans' visible tactics. A fresh contact blinked into existence deeper in the corridor. Not faint, not hiding. It appeared like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through every sensor net. The signature was wrong in every way. Too dense, too quiet, too heavy. On the human bridge, officers stiffened. Ho's posture changed, subtle but immediate. "K." The calm remained, but something older slid beneath it. "Identify," Hallie said. A human sensor tech answered, voice tight, unknown, not matching radar profiles. Not matching any council registry. Mass reading is high. Missions are low. It is running cold. Velethan felt their blood chill. Running cold meant patience. It meant a hunter that knew how to disappear. Kethrai saw it too. For the first time, the enemy commander's confidence cracked. Their crest flattened. Their claws tightened. "That is not ours," Kethrai whispered. The second officer stared. "Then whose is it?" No one answered. The corridor had been full of hidden ships already, but this new presence felt different. The raiders had hidden like thieves. This hid like a predator that did not fear being found. Human drones shifted, some turning away from the command ship, forming a partial screen toward the new contact. The human net had to stretch now, and stretching was dangerous. On the habitat chain, civilians sensed the change without understanding it. The alarms did not change tone, but the humans' voices did. They became shorter, more careful. Kind of voice you use when you realize the storm you were watching is not the real storm. Velethan leaned toward the console, speaking softly. "Hele, what is it?" Hele took a slow breath. "Do not know." That admission hit harder than any weapon display. The humans had been confident because they understood the raiders. They understood fear tactics. They understood how predators behaved. This new contact did not fit. Hale continued, voice low. "But I know what it means when something bigger stays quiet while smaller hunters feed." Velethan's frills lifted with dread. "It means the smaller ones are bait." Hal did not deny it. The enemy command ship, wounded in pride and in options, began to drift toward the new contact as if seeking shelter. Kethrai's eyes flicked between the humans and the dark mass deeper in the corridor. Their raids had always been about taking from the weak. They had never considered that they might be the weak part of someone else's plan. In that moment, fragile civilizations and hardened survivors shared the same realization. The Helix corridor was not a battlefield because the humans declared it so. It was a battlefield because something had chosen it as a hunting ground. And the humans, born on a Deathworld, were about to meet a predator that had been waiting for them. The new contact did not rush forward. It did not signal. It did not adjust course in any way that suggested urgency. It simply existed in the corridor like a gravity well, quiet and undeniable. Every sensor tried to define it and failed in a different way. The mass readings disagreed with the visual profile. The thermal signature contradicted the power draw. It was a thing built to confuse anyone looking at it. Velethan felt a tightness behind their eyes that had nothing to do with fear alone. It was awe, mixed with a dawning sense of scale. This presence was older than the raiders' confidence and colder than their cruelty. It felt like a test. On the human flagship, Hale watched the data stream without blinking. Officers spoke in clipped phrases, sharing fragments rather than full thoughts. This was not panic. It was focus sharpened to a dangerous edge. "Range?" Hale asked. "Closing, but slowly," the sensor tech replied. "Vector suggests it is not trying to hide anymore. It wants to be seen." "That is worse," a council officer whispered. Hole nodded once. "Yes." The enemy command ship drifted closer to the dark mass, its previous aggression gone. Kethrai's posture had changed. Their movements were smaller now, controlled. A raider who had always been the sharpest thing in the dark had suddenly realized the dark could look back. Kethrai opened a channel to the human task group, voice stripped of triumph. "Human commander." "That presence is not part of our fleet," Hyle answered without mockery. "I know." Kethrai hesitated, then continued. "It was not part of the plan." Hale's reply was calm but carried weight. "That makes two of us." For a moment, predator and prey shared the same uncertainty, and the corridor held its breath. The new contact finally moved, not toward the habitat chain, not toward the humans, but toward the drifting remains of one of the disabled raider ships. Its motion was smooth and unhurried. It extended structures that did not read as weapons or tools. Yet the wreck began to break apart under their touch, pulled inward, compressed, consumed. Valethin's frills flattened tight against their head. It is feeding. The word felt crude, but nothing else fit. Hale's jaw tightened. Yes, the raider wreck vanished piece by piece into the dark mass. No explosion, no debris, just absence. The process was efficient, almost gentle, which made it worse. This was not rage. This was routine. A human officer spoke, voice low. Sir, if it finishes with that hole, it will have a clear path to the habitat chain. Hale looked at the map, then at the human ships still holding their defensive line. We cannot let it reach civilians. Valethin swallowed. Can you stop it? Hale did not answer right away. When they did, it was honest. I do not know, but we will try. That was when the aliens truly began to understand the difference. Most council species believed strength meant certainty. You fought when you knew you could win. You withdrew when the odds turned. Humans carried a different rule, carved into them by a world that did not offer guarantees. You acted because not acting was worse. In the habitat chain, people felt the change even without seeing the data. The hum of systems sounded louder. The shadows felt heavier. A human engineer paused in a corridor, resting a gloved hand on the wall as if grounding themselves. A civilian asked, voice shaking, "Is it another raider?" The engineer shook their head slowly. No. Then what is it? The engineer thought of forests where silence meant danger, of oceans that swallowed ships without warning, of storms that grew while you slept. It is something that has done this before. The human task group repositioned again, this time not around the raiders, but between the dark mass and the habitat chain. The movement was deliberate and visible. They wanted it to see them. Valethin realized the significance with a jolt. You're presenting yourselves as the threat. Hale nodded. Predators respect resistance. The dark mass responded, but not in the way anyone expected. It did not fire. It did not accelerate. It changed shape. Structures unfolded along its surface, adjusting like muscle under skin. New vectors appeared, each one calculated to test the human line. It was mapping them in real time. Cathrai watched in horror as the thing they had unknowingly lured into the corridor treated both raiders and humans as variables. Their raids had been loud. This was silent. Their tactics had relied on fear. This relied on inevitability. Cathrai opened another channel, this one to their scattered ships. All units withdraw. Maximum burn. Several raider captains hesitated. Withdrawal had never been part of their identity. It felt like weakness. That hesitation cost them. The dark mass extended again, faster this time. One raider ship vanished into it, not destroyed, not broken, simply taken. Its signal cut off mid-breath. The corridor erupted in panic from the raider side. Ships scattered, colliding with debris, breaking formation completely. Fear had finally found them, and had found them unprepared. The humans did not chase. They held position. Valethin stared. Why are you not pursuing them? Hale's voice was steady. They are no longer the primary threat. The dark mass adjusted its course, now angling directly toward the human ships. It was close enough that its sheer presence warped sensor readings. Gravity rippled faintly. The humans' hulls creaked under stresses that had nothing to do with weapons. On the observer deck, a council officer sank into a seat, eyes wide. It is bigger than our largest dreadnought. Hale did not correct them. Size was not the point. Human officers reported damage as the invisible pressure increased. Systems strained. But the ships held, reinforced for forces their builders had once thought unreasonable. Earth gravity had taught humans what unreasonable felt like. The dark mass paused again, as if considering the line of human vessels. It extended a narrow projection, touching the edge of a human ship's shield. The shield flared and held. The projection withdrew. It was testing. Valethin felt their breath come shallow. It is learning. Yes, Hale said. So are we. The human ships began to transmit, not to the enemy, but to each other. Short bursts of data, adjustments, shared models. They were building a picture together the way early humans had shared stories about predators and storms. One human officer spoke softly, almost to themselves. It behaves like a deep ocean thing. Hale's head turned. Explain. It approaches cautiously, tests pressure points. It consumes what is weak or isolated. It does not waste energy on displays. Heli nodded. Then we cannot give it weakness. The human formation tightened, overlapping fields, sharing load. The beam scars on one hull glowed faintly as another ship adjusted to take some of the stress. No ship stood alone. In the habitat chain, civilians watched the human ships take position between them and the unknown. And something shifted in their fear. It did not vanish. It hardened into something else. A dock worker whispered, "They are standing in front of it." A child asked, "Will they break?" The parent answered, voice trembling but firm. They were born where breaking meant dying. The dark mass moved again, closer now, its presence pressing on the human line like a rising tide. Systems alarms flared across the task group. Hull integrity dropped in small increments. The pressure was relentless. Council officer cried out, "Your ships cannot take that indefinitely." Hale's response was quiet. "Indefinitely is not the goal." Velathan looked at Hale, realization dawning. "You are buying time." "Yes." "For what?" Hale's eyes flicked to a data stream only human ships could see. "For everyone else to understand?" The humans began broadcasting then, not tactical data, but something far more dangerous. They opened a channel to the wider council network, pushing through interference and fear. "This is human command in the Helix corridor," Hale said, voice steady and carrying. "If you are listening, understand this. The threat you are seeing does not respond to fear or negotiation. It responds to resistance and unity. If you stand alone, it will take you. If you scatter, it will feed." Velathan felt a chill. This was not a call for help. It was a warning. Hall continued. "We are holding because we were shaped by a world that did not care if we were ready. You were not shaped that way. That does not make you weak. It means you must learn quickly." The dark mass reacted to the broadcast, not angrily, but with interest. Its projections shifted, probing the human line more aggressively now, as if curious about this loudness, this refusal to hide. A human ship groaned as structural stress climbed. An officer reported, "Forward section nearing limits." Another ship slid closer, sharing the load without being asked. Velathan watched, heart pounding. This was not coordination born of command alone. It was instinct. Packed behavior forged under pressure. Kethri's command ship lingered at the edge of the scene, engines damaged, pride shattered. Kethri watched the humans hold and felt a terrible clarity. They had always believed themselves predators. In this moment, they were prey, watching something else test the fence. Kethri opened a channel to Hale, voice stripped bare. "Human, if that thing breaks you, it will come for everyone." Hale did not turn away from the display. "I know, then why stay?" Hale answered without heat or pride. "Because if we run, it learns that the galaxy breaks." The dark mass pressed harder. One human ship's shields flickered, another's hull deformed slightly, metal bending but not tearing. Alarms rose, then steadied as systems compensated. On the observer deck, Velathan felt tears form without understanding why. Perhaps it was the sight of fragile beings choosing to stand. Perhaps it was the realization that the galaxy's idea of safety had always been borrowed. The pressure reached a point where something had to give. Human officers exchanged glances. Hale took a slow breath. "Prepare phase shift." A council officer snapped their head up. "Phase shift. At this range, you could tear yourselves apart." Hale's voice was firm. "We know." Velathan's frills flared. "Then why do it?" Hale looked at the dark mass, at the civilians behind them, at the raiders fleeing in terror. "Because sometimes surviving a Deathworld means you learn when to risk everything." The human ships began to power systems no council vessel would dare engage so close to an unknown gravitational anomaly. Energy built, humming through holes already under strain. The dark mass reacted at last, projections tightening, pressure increasing. The corridor felt like it was closing in on itself. Every alien watching, every civilian holding their breath, every raider fleeing into the dark felt the same thing at once. Something inevitable was coming. And the humans, born under crushing gravity and endless threat, were about to show the galaxy what it meant to face fear head-on. Not to conquer it, but to endure it long enough to change the rules forever. The phase shift did not look dramatic at first. There was no flash, no roar. The human ships simply changed their relationship with space, sliding sideways through rules that most species treated as fixed. The pressure from the dark mass surged in response, as if reality itself resisted being bent so close to something so dense. Alarms rose across the human task group, then steadied. Hulls groaned, systems strained. But the line held. For the first time since it appeared, the dark mass reacted with something that resembled urgency. Its projections retracted and redeployed, probing for weakness that was no longer where it had been moments before. The humans had shifted just enough to force the predator to recalculate. Velathan felt the tremor through the observer deck and gripped the railing. "You moved without moving." Hale's voice was tight now, effort leaking through control. He stepped where it did not expect ground. The dark mass advanced again, faster this time, its shape tightening as it focused. It extended a structure toward the center of the human line, testing the shared load. The pressure spiked beyond previous levels. One human ship's shield collapsed with a sharp flare of light. Before the observer crew could cry out, another human vessel slid into place, its hull taking the strain. Metal deformed. Heat bled away through layered plating. The ship held. On the bridge of that ship, a human officer reported through clenched teeth, "We can take this for another minute." Hall answered immediately, "You will not have to." The phase shift completed. Space around the dark mass twisted, not violently, but decisively. The human maneuver had not been an attempt to flee or strike. It had been a placement. They had moved the fight to a position where the predator's greatest strength became a problem. The dark mass surged forward and slowed. Civilians in the habitat chain leaned closer to viewports. Council observers forgot to breathe. The predator chose to push. It extended multiple projections at once, trying to anchor itself and force its way through. The pressure on the human line spiked beyond anything before. Hull integrity dropped in sharp increments. Warnings filled human displays. Hale's voice cut through it all.
"Ow."
Human ships fired, not beams, but pulses tuned to the environment they had just reshaped. Energy rippled through space in overlapping waves, not aimed to destroy, but to destabilize. The pulses struck the projections and the space around them, amplifying the forces already at work. The dark mass shuddered. For the first time, its perfect control faltered. One projection buckled, another twisted out of alignment. The predator tried to pull back, but the gradient resisted, turning retreat into strain. Kethri watched from their damaged command ship, Crest, flattened in terror. They had never seen anything like this. It's not a battle of fire, but of endurance and understanding. The humans were not overpowering the predator, they were outlasting it. The dark mass made a sound that sensors translated poorly, a vibration that rippled through the corridor. It was not pain, it was recalibration. Then it did something unexpected. It released. The pressure eased suddenly as the dark mass withdrew its projections and compressed inward, shedding mass it had taken earlier. Wreckage spilled out, twisted but intact enough to identify. The predator pulled away from the human line, retreating deeper into the corridor. Human ships did not pursue. They held position until the mass had moved beyond effective range, until its presence faded into cold silence. Only then did systems power down from critical levels. Only then did human crews allow themselves to sit back, breathing hard, hands shaking. On the observer deck, Velathan realized their frills were trembling uncontrollably. "It left, yes," Hyle said quietly. "For now," a council officer asked, voice raw. "Why did it retreat?" Holly considered the question. "Because it learned this ground costs more than it wants to pay." In the habitat chain, lights stabilized. Emergency systems powered down one by one. Civilians who had been holding their breath for hours sagged where they stood, laughter and tears mixing in the corridors. A dockworker collapsed onto a crate, shaking. They held it. A human medic passed by, offering a steady hand. We all did. The raiders did not return. The remaining ships fled the corridor entirely, scattering into deep space. Kethri ordered a full withdrawal without protest. Their raids were over. The corridor had become something else in their minds, a place where predators learned limits. Kethri opened a final channel to Hale, voice low and stripped of arrogance. "You could have destroyed us," Calais answered without anger. "You are not the lesson." Cathrai closed the channel, understanding too late what that meant. In the hours that followed, the human task group remained on station. They helped stabilize habitats, tow damaged vessels, and recover survivors from wreckage the Predator had discarded. They worked without ceremony, without waiting for council approval. Vilithin walked among them, recording not speeches but actions. Humans sharing water, humans bracing holes with their own bodies while seals cured. Humans speaking softly to terrified civilians, explaining what to do next in simple words. The council analyst approached Vilithin, eyes distant. We thought humans brought danger with them. Vilithin shook their heads slowly. They brought understanding. Later, in a quiet moment, aboard the human flagship, Vilithin asked Hel the question that had been building since the first archive clip. Why did you stay? Vilithin asked. Even when the risk became so high, Hel looked out at the corridor, at the scars left behind, because leaving would have taught the wrong lesson. To whom? To everyone, Hel said, including ourselves. The council convened an emergency session within the day. This time, the humans were not on a screen, distant and abstract. They were present in the room, gravity set to their standard. Several delegates struggled to stand. None complained. The council asked for explanations. The humans offered clarity, not boasts. They explained Earth's storms and predators, its crushing gravity and relentless change. They explained how survival had never been guaranteed, how endurance had been learned not as a virtue, but as a necessity. They explained the cost. A human delegate spoke, voice steady. Living on a death world means you bury people. It means you rebuild after loss. It means you grow up knowing the ground can give way and the sky can turn against you. It also means you learn how to stand together when it does. The chamber was silent. Vilithin watched faces shift from fear to something heavier, edged with unease. The realization that humans were not dangerous because they sought conflict, but because they had been shaped by it. The council voted unanimously to classify Earth and its colonies as a frontier species of highest endurance rating. Defense doctrines were revised, training programs rewritten, patrol patterns changed to reflect lessons learned the hard way. The Helix corridor reopened under joint protection, but humans remained a constant presence, not as rulers, as sentinels. Months later, long-range sensors detected the dark mass again. Far from council space, it did not approach. It altered course, skirting systems that now broadcast human presence openly. Predators learned, even ancient ones. The report ended with a single observation. When the galaxy feared war, humans explained what a real battlefield looks like. It looks like standing when leaving would be easier. It looks like sharing the weight until the storm passes. It looks like understanding that survival is not about winning, but about making sure others live long enough to learn. On Earth, storms still formed without warning. Predators still hunted. Gravity still pressed down on every step. Humans continued to bury their dead and build again. And across the stars, when darkness moved and patience watched, the galaxy remembered the Helix corridor and the species that did not break, not because they were unafraid, but because they had learned, on a death world, how to endure.